Welcome back. This is Read 85, lecture number 2 for week 3. Our objectives for this session is to first meet your colleagues for the semester. Second, you'll recall last week we started articulating the role of the reading specialist. This week we are refining that role as we have wrapped up the first unit of the course, which is on the role of the reading specialist. And then last, we are going to be examining the existing California framework, the California Common Core State Standards, and the new 2014 draft ELA ELD California framework, which is an optional reading. So first, I wanted to start with some good news. One thing I enjoy about teaching this class so far is that I feel like I'm able to bring in a lot of things that I'm using currently in my role as an administrator. And one thing that we do is when we start any meeting, we always start with good news and open it up for anyone to share any good news that they have. And I feel like that's a way to not only team build, get to know each other, but also to celebrate things either professionally or personally with your group or team that you work with. So I encourage you, as you are planning meetings as a professional, to try out starting the meeting with good news. I do this in whole group meetings as well as just one-on-one coaching meetings. I'll always start the meeting by asking them what good news they have and any celebrations they'd like to share with me, and it just really helps us start the meeting on a positive tone. So just a little tip for you to put in your toolbox as you go out and plan meetings. Definitely open it up with some good news. My good news is that it's already week 3, and I recently completed grading all of your week 1 discussion posts and was very impressed with the quality of work I saw. So keep up the good work on. Also, it is a whopping 30 degrees in Michigan right now, which is substantially warmer than the -30 it was earlier in the week. We're supposed to get a good 8 inches of snow this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. All right, good news. Also, one little tip to share with you, that is the Excel model from the Flippin group, and that's actually where this idea of good news comes from. The Excel model, Excel is an acronym that frames how you should structure your interactions and meetings you might be planning. So the E stands for engage, so greeting people, asking about their good news. The X stands for explore, so explore their needs, possibly by asking questions. The C stands for communicate, so show you care in your communication, but also what's the message you're hoping to give them. The next E stands for empower, so provide tools and resources. And then the L stands for launch, so giving a meaningful ending or conclusion to your interaction or your meeting. And so this is the structure we try to follow when we set up our meetings and professional development and anything like that. And I'm trying to apply this a little bit more to our course. You might notice I just started with good news, and then I usually have some sort of launch, a quote or something that gives a meaningful ending, but it's been really helpful to apply this structure to difficult conversations, especially. And I found I've been more successful with difficult parents or coaching teachers through a sticky situation when I start by giving them a nice greeting, kind of just asking them some questions about what's going on, communicating the message that I ultimately need to give, and then empowering to take that message and do something with it, and then giving them a meaningful launch, maybe with an affirmation or something of that nature. So that is the Excel model. I found it very helpful for structuring interactions. All right, let's move into our actual content for the week. First, I wanted you guys to get to know each other a little bit. So Read 585, who are we? Well, some of our demographic data here. We have 21 participants, 20 female and 1 male. Go Vince. We also have 2 ladies abroad. Christina is in Australia, and then we have Jess in the United Arab Emirates. We have 9 folks in the Los Angeles, Orange County area. 3 people are up in Northern California. 1 person, Sarah, is in Arizona. All right, thinking about current positions, we currently have 2 resource specialists among us, 4 elementary teachers, 1 middle school teacher, 1 teacher on special assignment in the special education field in Capistrano Unified, and that's Kim, 1 community college tutor, that's Sarah, an English teacher at Merced Community College, Vince, that's your second shout out, 1 preschool director, Betsy, 3 literacy learning academic type specialists, Christina with a K, Bettina, and Christina with a C, 1 recent child development graduate, that's Trisha, and she is looking forward to starting to work as a teacher soon. We have 1 very dedicated sub, Tracy, who sounds like could be in great use at many of your schools where there are sub shortages. We have 1 teaching veteran, Kathy, with 27 years. We have 2 volunteers, 1 at a school, Susan, and then 1 volunteering in adult literacy, and that's Christina. We have a traveling Title I intervention teacher, Valerie, and then we definitely have many moms, but right now Lynette and Susan both are at home taking care of their little ones. So looking at our goals, yes, the Super Bowl is coming up this weekend. Many of our goals consist of becoming a reading specialist, very appropriate for the nature of this course. A lot of people were very candid in saying their short-term goal is to get their reading specialist credential and or their master's. We do have someone who needs help with thinking of a master's project idea, so if you have any good ideas, let me know. I can share those with them. A few people want to be developing expertise in their current position. I definitely hear you there. They also want to improve their intervention methods. A number of people also mentioned teaching community college courses, either in the near or distant future. Someone wanted to work at the district level. Another entrepreneur wanted to open a business, possibly to help struggling readers, or open a literacy clinic was also a goal. Act as a consultant for parents. Buy a house overseas and visit France. Sounds like a good goal to me. And then someone said question mark, and that's completely fine as well. I feel like I started out not sure what I wanted to do after college and then came to education by way of Teach for America and then learned that I really loved teaching reading, so then wanted to be a reading specialist, and then while I was a reading specialist learned that I really love coaching teachers, so then I wanted to be more of a coach, so I had a dean role where my primary role is supposed to be coaching teachers, but I do a lot of administrative things instead, and now in this role I found that I really do like doing things more on the academic side, so I might be moving more in that direction. So it's okay for your goals to continually evolve. But it sounds like we are definitely a bunch of goal-oriented people, and that's who we are this semester, Read 585. All right, getting back to closing up our conversation on this topic of what really is a reading specialist anyway. We've done a lot of reading on the topic. We've done some discussion on the topic. So what is a reading specialist? So I went through your discussion forums and kind of pulled out some key things I noticed that we were talking about. First of all, the reading specialist would be someone who is highly qualified. Many of you included qualifications on your job description. These ones I actually pulled from Kathy. And her professional qualifications included that they must possess a reading language arts credential, yes. Also, a master's degree in education with an emphasis in reading is preferred, yes. At least 5 years of teaching experience, that's very important. If you are coaching teachers, you want to have experience to pull from, and you will also want them to have trust that you are a capable teacher, so it helps if you have that experience to draw from. And the ability to interact in a positive way with children as well as adults. So that hits that interpersonal skill set that we've been talking about. And then she also included this from the IRA, an understanding of how learning proceeds across the lifespan, so the lifelong learner piece. So those were some of the qualifications, because as we know, a reading specialist should be very highly qualified. What else is a reading specialist? They are not a sub. Poor Stephanie. I think she opened a can of worms. I don't think she meant to advocate for literacy specialists being substitute teachers, but I think she was trying to communicate that that might, in part, be part of the role, which I do think it is important to be upfront with people when you are hiring them to let them know what the role consists of, so then when you ask them to do these things, they don't have different expectations. So, Stephanie, I know where you were coming from by putting administrative tasks and whatnot in your job description and subbing, but a lot of people were quite riled up about the fact that a reading specialist might be subbing. I think we all agree that that is not the best use of their time, but that it is a current reality. I know earlier this year we had a lot of problems getting subs in the building, and I am the administrator who oversees subs and our sub system, and it is a little bit of a nightmare from a liability perspective because you have complete strangers coming to your building, working with your students, and you have no idea their background or what they're up to. We've definitely had some issues where I've had to dismiss subs midday, so that's kind of a hot mess. So at least your literacy specialist you can trust. But then the other issue is that a sub will pick up the job and then no show, or no one will pick up the job, or a teacher gets sick first thing in the morning. So there are many circumstances that lead to you not having subs. One success I had was I actually had a sub open house where I lured people to our building and gave them a tour and talked it up, and they all highly agreed that they would be more likely to sub at our school after that experience because they felt familiar with the building and they knew what they were going into, and they knew some of the key people in the building, and I introduced them to key people in the building during the tour. So since we did that, we actually haven't had too many issues getting subs because I was able to build a network of about, I think 30 people came to the open house. Of the 30, I think there were 10, 15 that I used pretty consistently, and we'll just call them up and book them in advance. So that's definitely helped for your sub woes. Just a thought on that. But yeah, we definitely don't want our literacy specialist being the sub. What else is a reading specialist? Well, they are definitely a jack of too many trades. I know Kim brought it up repeatedly, the fact that we have too many things in our job descriptions and we really need to prioritize, and the literacy specialist can't do all of these things well. So prioritize what's most important. Jen tried to do that a little bit as well by allocating those percentages. So instruction would be 40% of their role, which makes sense. I think with all of the readings, they really emphasize that for a reading specialist, their primary role is instruction of students. So kudos to Jen for assigning some percentages and trying to quantify what we're doing with our time. 20% of time would be reading program coordination, 20% would be staff development and coaching, 10% assessment, and 10% resource, and if we do the math, that's 100% of our time. So going back to that idea of needing to prioritize, Elizabeth used this statement from IRA that the reading specialist will assume multiple roles depending on the needs of the student population and the teacher needs. So that right there is how we prioritize all of these different facets of the role to design the responsibilities that make the most sense for the context at that current point in time. So through some of our experiences in this course, we're going to develop skills on how exactly you do that, how you look at data for a school, for a sample, and then from there prioritize what is the most important to start with as a literacy specialist. When I started as a literacy specialist, we were opening a school, so I had no idea who the students would be, what the demographic was like, what their needs would be. after doing our diagnostic assessments and our baseline assessments, we only had 15% of our students reading on grade level. So my priority was really developing teachers and the core classroom instruction because I couldn't realistically see all of the students who needed intervention. And so from there, I had to create intervention for just the most at-risk students, but really focus on collaboration with teachers and targeting students in the Tier 1 population. So your role is actually quite dependent on the context you find yourself in. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're thinking about the roles and responsibilities of the reading specialist. All right, some other things I wanted to highlight from the discussion forum were some outside of the box thinking. Bettina mentioned the fact that data analysis should be a part of the role, and that was something I felt like was lacking in the articles. They didn't talk a lot about the importance of being able to analyze school-wide data to, make an action plan for the school kind of thing. That's very important, as well as helping teachers look at assessment results critically and plan instruction off of those. So good work, Bettina, bringing that to the forefront of our minds. Susan had a few great ideas as well. She was the only one, I think, to talk about accelerating students. So many times we think of the reading specialist just doing remediation and reteaching, but as you recall, they are responsible for the instruction of all learners, and then in particular, readers who need some extra intervention. So acceleration would be something the specialist should be thinking about too. And one idea she talked specifically about would be having goals for students, and that way there would be communication between the classroom teacher and the specialist over the goals. So hopefully I got your idea right and articulated that well, Susan, but I thought that was a great idea of really looking at each student learner, planning goals specific to that learner, and then collaborating as a team on meeting those goals with the student. Jess had something quite interesting in her description, and that was a 3-year contract commitment, which actually forced me to reflect on the past 2 job interviews I've had recently for my most recent positions. Both either expressed the fact that they wanted someone in the position for a minimum of 2 years, if not a minimum of 4 years, and asked me how many years I could commit to the position. So I know people are definitely looking when they have these roles, especially when they're trying to build a new school or build a new program. They want stability with that. They want someone who can commit a few years in a row. Honestly, the first year is a lot of building the foundation, and so it's not enough to just have the person in this role for 1 year and then leave. So you really want to find someone who is committed. I thought that was very smart that Jess included that in her description. Vince brought up the need for technology skills. Yes, definitely, not only because of the changing types of literacy we're seeing, much more digital literacy, but also the fact that as a literacy specialist I did a lot of Excel spreadsheets, a lot of work on my computer, a lot of presentations. So technology skills are very important, even teaching and coaching teachers in technology skills. And then lastly, Christina brought up another element, which was diversity and culturally responsive teaching. So that is also very important as a literacy specialist. All right, switching gears a little bit. Last week, you only had one article to read. You had a choice. One was geared more toward the role of the reading specialist at the elementary level, and then we had the middle and high school article. So I will start with the first one, which is the elementary article, the role of the reading specialist, which comes from the reading teacher. So back in week 1, we read a few different things. We read the IRA position statement about being a literacy specialist. Second, we read an article where they surveyed current IRA members, right, who self-identified as a literacy specialist, and they self-reported their ideas on their position. And then third, We read the Mraz article, which surveyed principals, classroom teachers, and reading specialists, and looked more at the perceptions of each of those parties regarding the role of the reading specialist. So that was the reading we had done initially. This article is actually a lit review from journal articles ranging from the years 1990 to 2001. So it looked at all of the research during that time frame on the role of the literacy specialist. They started out with this definition of a reading specialist as being defined as a specially prepared professional, which is definitely something many of you highlighted in your job descriptions, as they need adequate preparation to be successful in this role. And then they are responsible for the literacy performance of readers in general or struggling readers in particular. So thinking about the general population, the whole school programming, as well as intervention in the struggling readers, and what are we doing about acceleration too, that's also important. So again, they did a lit review. They looked at the diversity and complexity of the role, and they commented as well about how the role is often shaped by things like the funding source. So if you're funded through Title I, that pretty much restricts and limits your work, and that you primarily will do intervention with students categorized as, funded by Title I, because there are so many years or percentage points behind grade level. And it also talked about how the funding source could maybe determine if you're push in or pull out, because if you have a high population of Title I students, you may need to do push in so you can service them all, versus if you have a smaller population of Title I qualifying students, then you would maybe be able to do pull out. Principal perception, again, is something that may impact the complexity of the role. And their big conclusion, which is something I'd like to echo and hope you take away from lectures this week, is that the responsibilities differ a great deal depending on the context. So the role of a literacy specialist in one school can and should look very different when compared to a school in a different area with different needs. And so part of the difficulty in being a reading specialist is you need to do a critical look and a needs assessment almost of your school population and think about what makes the most sense to be your role. All right, moving on with that article. They found, they looked at the question, do reading specialists make a difference? And we've talked about this a little bit before. Prepared teachers have a bigger impact than paraprofessionals in this role, not surprising. Also, I talked about this week one, but schools with certified reading specialists had higher achievement scores than schools without certified reading specialists. However, only 26% of schools have a certified specialist, so that's not a good sign. Professionals with the strongest backgrounds in the teaching of reading have the highest success rates. So I know a lot of you are taking this course really just to build your background and your expertise and to get better at your role as a classroom teacher. And I really respect that, because you will be a more effective classroom teacher as a result of getting this advanced degree. All right, and then lastly, they looked at how specialists should function. And they use this term of collaborative consultant, which seems to encompass the fact that the person in this role is really working to build collaborative relationships with many different parties. So this means that they might be a resource to teachers, they're giving them personal suggestions, they're engaging in demonstration teaching, they're doing team teaching, they're also collaborating with parents and families, or they're doing parent workshops. So they are a collaborative consultant. And then they identified 6 major responsibilities for the role. So adding on to our existing list, they included instruction. The reading specialist must consider where and how much instruction will take place and what the focus of instruction will be. In assessment, they must decide when to use formal or informal assessment and how to link it to instruction. As a collaborator, the reading specialist must find ways to work effectively with classroom teachers and other professionals. When serving as a resource or consultant, the reading specialist must work with parents, teachers, and administrators. Leadership on the part of the reading specialist can involve staff development, the selection of materials, and curriculum development. And then lastly, as a student advocate, the reading specialist must find ways to motivate and enhance students' self-esteem. So each of those 6 pieces you'll find here in their visual. And they did close in saying that the major responsibility continues to be the instruction of the students, which has been consistent with our other articles we have read in the class. All right, implications of this study. Implications for reading specialists. They need to be aware of the complex nature of their jobs, and then in order to cope with that, they need to establish a network of people that can be resources to them, because often you are very isolated in your setting, being the only person in your setting doing the job that you are doing. You need to have that network that you can reach out to for your own professional development, which we talked about last week. Implications involving teachers. So as a reading specialist, you really need to leverage their support. This quote has really been on my mind from an RTI training I went to, which is, you can't supplement poor instruction. So if the classroom teacher is not effective for 5.5 hours of the day, the half hour you have the kids and you are doing effective instruction is going to be muddled by the majority of time spent in ineffective instruction. So definitely need to leverage the support of the teachers, involve them in professional development so that you can work collaboratively to improve the students' literacy. Implications for administrators. They need to better understand the role, and you need to help them better understand the role by having a clear job description for them based on the needs of your school. Also, they need to protect the reading specialist time and not have them subbing in classrooms. And then lastly, for teacher educators, aka Cal State Fullerton, make sure we're providing experiences to build knowledge and understanding of literacy, as well as providing experiences to build leadership and consultant skills, which is one of the primary goals of this course, is to talk about those things of being a leader and a consultant. All right, switching gears to the last and final article, we will read and discuss about the topic of the role of the reading specialist. This one is geared to middle and high school literacy coaches. Hopefully you read it. I know only 3 people, I believe, wrote job descriptions that were applicable for middle, high school, and then there was a community college example as well. So this role does look very different in middle and in high school. In the article, they opened with the standards for secondary level coaches from IRA. So thinking about the standards for secondary level coaches, they include being a collaborator, being a job embedded coach, an evaluator of literacy needs, and then providing instructional strategies in English language arts, math, science, and social studies. So when you think about instruction, assessment, leadership is what we had for lower elementary coaches, and now these roles already look very different than what we've been talking about. I don't see instruction directly on here. They are more of the instructional strategists. Also, secondary coaches need a breadth of content knowledge that enables them to provide appropriate support to content teachers and to improve academic literacy in each core subject area. So this is a big challenge of a middle or high school secondary level coach. You not only need a strong background in literacy practices, but also in content area literacy and in other contents. And the students you work with are very different, so you need a background in adolescent literacy and in adolescent psychology probably. And there are just many different dynamics working with older students to think about motivation is big. We talked about that in 516, how motivation from younger students to older students differs. The gap is wider. So lots to think about as a secondary coach. So they did a web-based national survey for this study, and major findings were that coaching at the secondary level is very different from coaching at the elementary level. You're serving a larger number of teachers usually. You are serving a more diverse group of students, also because of the achievement gap widening over time. So you might see greater student needs. You're going to have to make up more time and more gaps in instruction. Also, they have the difficulty of trying to convince the content area teacher of the need for literacy instruction. So there may be secondary teachers who don't see the purpose behind doing reading and writing instruction in their content area, which hopefully in pushing Common Core, everyone is seeing the need to push reading and writing skills in all subject areas. Furthermore, there is caution for developers of professional development on drawing from literature focused on elementary coaching because it does look so much different at the adolescent level. All right, another important finding would be that the frequency with which secondary coaches performed the 3 leadership roles, which are collaboration, coaching, and evaluation. So again, these primary roles are different than the elementary coach, but then here in secondary, there's more of a focus on collaboration and less of a focus on coaching and even less on evaluation. So in the article, you can see the survey that was actually given. And then starting on page 318, in table 3, they give you the statements that pertain to activities you would do as a collaborator, and then those are in ranked order. And then they give you the activities as a coach in ranked order, and then lastly the activities pertaining to evaluation in ranked order. Most unfortunate is that coaches are not spending very much time on school-wide data analysis. So if you look at the activities as an evaluator, only 14% are looking, 16% are examining student work with teachers, 22% are analyzing trends in content area achievement tests. So there isn't a lot of work on data analysis happening at the secondary level, which is very concerning there. Whew, all right, that is a wrap almost. So hopefully you feel like you have a better sense of who is in the course with you. You're going to be starting to give them feedback on their professional preparation documents. Hopefully you have a very clear understanding of the role of the reading specialist and the many hats that the reading specialist wears, both in the elementary setting and also the middle school, high school setting. And then as we go into this week, you're going to get a better grasp of the California Common Core state standards. Again, these are your readings for the week. First, doing that module on Common Core state standards for California educators. Don't forget to create an account. Then you're going to read the introduction of the California Common Core state standards. You can also peruse the Common Core state standards if you're not very familiar with them. Third, you will read Chapter 2 of the Old California Framework on Effective Literacy Practices. And then if you have some extra time, you can read the draft versions of the new California Framework. maybe chapters 2 and 3 because they best align with our topic this week. And you can even provide some feedback. All right, to launch you this week, I'm going to start to show a TED Talk, and you can feel free to stop it whenever you'd like. If you're not familiar with TED Talks, they are amazing. TED is a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. They started in 1984 just as a conference to bring together technology, entertainment, and design, but since then they've really broadened their scope, and they make the conference talks available online, and it really showcases the world's most fascinating thinkers and doers who are challenged to give the talk of their lives in 18 minutes or less. So this is a great place to go to get good ideas worth sharing. So this TED Talk comes from Simon Sinek, and it's about how great leaders inspire action. Since one of the roles of the literacy specialist is leadership, and I don't think we go over very much on leadership in the program, I wanted to maybe inspire you with some words.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products.
So I'm not sure if you're still with me or not, but I did want to skip to the very end as he wraps up talking about leaders who inspire us because of using their why message versus their what message.
It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed him not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
All right, so as you go out this week, go and be a leader who inspires others. And we know how to do that is by leading with the why you do what you do instead of the how and what you do. So have a great week, and I will see you next week for week 4.